That. There we go.
Have the notification.
Okay, super.
So welcome. This is so my name is Andra Stopforth. I work at North Northants Council and I'm leading on the local nature recovery strategy document and also biodiversity net gain as well. And part of my background is from the sort of strategic planning side of things, but a keen interest in the environmental policy as well. So we're doing a series of presentations in relation to the local nature recovery strategy, which is out for consultation at the moment. So the draft is available to look at. We will close that consultation on the 9th of December. So if you have any comments to make, please make sure that they come through by that point. So we're doing this presentation particularly aimed towards farmers and landowners because there's a particular focus, I suppose, of local nature recovery strategies on what landowners might be able to support with for nature recovery. So the first slide here is really to set out what the LNRS is. It's a new approach for setting priorities for nature at a local level, and it is actually a statutory requirement in the Environment Act. So there's around 48 responsible authorities that are doing these across the country. So they will tend to be the county councils or unitary councils, and they're all working away on those at the moment. So when DEFRA set out the requirements, it was looked to be a 12 to 18 month process with your first LNRS to be completed by March 2025. That is a timescale, and I'll come on to that shortly. That's a timescale that we are still trying to meet. If we don't meet that, then there's implications with local government elections, which would have a delay on the process. Additionally, I think a lot of other responsible authorities are slightly delayed with their LNRS documents, and most of them won't be getting to public consultation until probably spring next year, if not the summer. So we are ahead of the game, which is good, but also means that we have a lot of questions that we don't necessarily have answers for at the moment. So the main purpose of the LNRS is to identify locations to create or improve habitat most likely to provide the greatest benefit for nature and the wider environment. So a lot of analysis has taken place on looking at the mapping that is available, as well as the priorities that various stakeholders want to see for the area. So that's given us those best locations that will give the greatest benefit. But crucially, it won't force landowners and land managers to make any changes if they don't want to. So it's what you could do, not what you should do, but it will help identify areas and opportunities for a wider natural network. So if you do have land that is less productive, or you're looking at diversifying, then this document and the mapping will make suggestions on what would have the best benefit for nature and the networks around there. So within North Northamptonshire, we have made some good progress. We've had a quite good governance structure agreed with oversight meetings within the authority that meet monthly. But importantly, we've had quite a lot of key partners to support the LNRS development. So they've been the Wildlife Trust and the NN Rivers Trust and the Records Centre, all providing their expert work patterns to provide information, but also to help steer the work. Further to that, we had a delivery advisory group that included the NFU, the CLA, Woodland Trust, Environment Agency, and Forestry Commission. So they would come together again regularly to make sure we were meeting the requirements and aspirations of those other organisations as well through this work. We did have quite some significant stakeholder engagement over spring and summer that included various tours, workshops, very specific questions that were asked at all of those workshops with a wide variety of partners and stakeholders and representatives of the community invited to those workshops. That all informed the vision that we have in the document, the priorities, and the practical actions that are set out in there. Alongside that, there was also a lot of technical evidence that was gathered. So statement of biodiversity, what we already have in the area, what the risks and what the opportunities are within North Northamptonshire. And then also the data around species and that kind of information to drill down and look at what the Record Centre hold, as well as the county recorders. So we had, again, those focus groups to really work out the wording that was necessary to support the document. And at this point, it's probably useful to say that we did start we were working very closely with West Northamptonshire up until the end of the workshops, where they've now taken a slightly different approach and are working away on their document whilst we're doing ours. But all of the information gathering was done collectively, but they are their own responsible authority and will be producing their own document. The actual requirements that we have to do to be legally compliant is to produce a strategy, the written document, if you like, but also a mapping to show how that strategy is looked at spatially. So where some of those ideas could come to fruition in those places. And that's all been brought about by having a lot of background information. So I mentioned the statement of biodiversity, mentioned the species methodology. The mapping methodology is quite involved because it draws on a lot of other evidence that's been looked at around ecosystem services and habitat opportunity mapping, as well as a natural capital investment plan. So there's a lot of data sitting behind that and a lot of analysis that has taken place, which I would point out is desk-based, so it hasn't been ground-truthed in the majority of instances, because that would be quite some job to be doing across the whole of the authority area. And then the stakeholder engagement report that's pulled together not only the workshops that took place, but other engagement with hard to reach groups and young people and old people, etc. So that has brought us to what's included in the strategy. So the vision, what we would, what all the stakeholders would like to see for nature up to 2034. That's quite a good place to start and gives the aspirations of the area. We're also linking it to wider environmental benefits. So before we started this call, we were talking about soil health and nutrient levels. There are other wider environmental benefits that we need to be thinking about alongside carbon sequestration, access, public health, flood water, all of those kind of multiple benefits that you can start to achieve from making changes to land use. The document then kind of splits at this point, where we have our North Northamptonshire wide priorities. So these apply across the area. There's 4 of those. And after that, we then split into character areas. So we have 3 character areas, and I'll show you a map of those shortly, which is the Rockingham Forest, the Nen Valley and the Ise Valley. And then they themselves are split into habitat types. And again, I'll show you a bit more of this later. But those habitat types are urban, woodland, grassland. That's not a time to forget, is it? You're 5. Woodland, grassland, water, farmland and urban. I think they're the 5. But anyway, we've got a slide on that shortly. And the idea of that is that as a landowner or someone that's interested in a particular area, you won't need to read the whole document. You can focus in on those chapters that are most relevant to you. So you can click through and get to those pages really quickly. And for each of those priorities, we then have our practical actions, sometimes also known as measures of what could be done to deliver those priorities. So it starts to break it down. And we do have, I think it's about 45 important species identified within North Northamptonshire. So we've recognised which ones relate to those and where those actions have been mapped. So not all of them have been mapped. In fact, only a small percentage of them have been mapped where we feel we've got the data necessary to actually put that as a location where we can think these things can happen. So that's the strategy side of it. We also have the mapping portal. Is that going to change slide? So the mapping portal includes all the existing areas of biodiversity, so triple SIs, nature reserves. They're all mapped because they're treated slightly differently, so they already should all have management plans associated with them. We then have the areas that could make a positive difference, so those areas that have been identified that would help to deliver those priorities that's come from previous evidence. At the moment, they're themed and related to specific actions, but actually when you put them all together, they're the areas that could become of importance for biodiversity. And these are all specific terms as set out in the legislation that we have to follow. So they're not the most intuitive terms, but the areas that could become of importance for biodiversity is all of those measures put together. And collectively, that's known as the local habitat map. And again, I'll show you some examples of that shortly. This is the timetable that I said we were working to. So we've had our focused engagement in the first part of this year. We have to consult with Natural England for 28 days before we're able to then go out to public consultations. That's to ensure we've met all the legal requirements. They're also a supporting authority. We are quite different in North Northamptonshire because we are unitary. We don't have any districts or boroughs that we need to bring along through the process. So that does help and help streamline the work programme. So after public consultation, we'll be looking at reviewing and making any changes throughout December before it then goes back to Natural England in January. And then we'll be taking it to a scrutiny committee at the council at the end of February, and all being well, adopt and publish our final strategy in March. Then it will just be a small case of delivering and supporting delivery and looking for funding after that. So the consultation material that we have at the moment is the main strategy and the mapping. There's a link on that slide if you haven't already been able to look for it, but you can just search North Northants LNRS in any search engine and it will come up. That includes the required background information, so the statement of biodiversity, the mapping methodology, etc. is also on that page. But also we've put together a delivery options document on there, and that makes suggestions for how planners, developers, land managers, farmers, foresters, individuals and communities and environmental organisations can support delivery. That kind of takes it down to the next level with some like real actionable things that you could start to consider. I'm not happy with how it looks at the moment, so we will be refreshing that document in December, January, so it's easier to digest. At the moment is quite a lot of text to be looking at. And then in addition to that, we have some case studies. We've got more to add to the 5 that are already on there. As we know, everyone's doing amazing work already in delivering natural environment improvements across the area. So we just want to highlight that good things are already happening and going on within the area, but they're where lessons can be learned and passed on to other people. So I'm just going to show you an example page from the document here. So page 18, this is the setup of how the pages look generally. So at the top here, we have our tabs that will help you move through the document. So as long as you downloaded it and opened it up in the right format, you can then click on those and it will take you to those right pages if you want to, or you can just simply scroll through the whole document. This is a North Northamptonshire priority, so it applies everywhere. The particular aim we've got for is increasing environmental resilience of nature across North Northamptonshire. And then here in the blue box, we have our practical actions. You'll see at the bottom of the blue box, we have a little star and a little triangle. So those denote if it's a species practical action or if it's a mapped practical action. So you can see from the list above, actually only one of those is then transferred onto the map. So that one is about functionally linked land. If it's a species, it would have a little triangle at the end. That's where I guess the detail is and where most of you would focus on what could we do within our area. Then up here in this box on the top right with all the symbols in, this is the links to the wider natural capital benefits. So I appreciate it's pretty small on the screen and on the document. It's a bit easier to see. So the ones that are in black are the ones that we think can be achieved from this particular priority. and it does change as you go through the different priorities in the document. Box 6 there is the rationale for the priorities, how this has been informed by the stakeholder discussions and experts that have fed into this. So that's detailed there. It's kind of the evidence. And then at the very bottom there's the Explore the Map, where you can click on that and it will take you through to the mapping portal. So we thought it was important to be able to have all the information on one page, so you're not having to read pages and pages just to find something that's useful to you. It's there page by page, and you can mark it up as you wish. After we have the Northamptonshire wide, we then split out into the character areas that I mentioned earlier. So again, the tabs at the top, if you're only interested in the NN Valley, you can click on that and it will just take you to those areas, and you can click on those bits as well. If you're interested in exactly where those lines are, again, the detail is in the mapping portal. And then, as I mentioned before, we have our key habitats within each of the areas. So urban, woodland, grassland, farmland and water. And again, you can click on those and it will take you to the grassland page, for example. There will be an introductory page or two that talks about the pressures, the risks, the opportunities before getting onto that page that looks like this one, where all the information is. So this one, you'll see the tabs at the top have slightly changed. This is the NN Valley. You can click on the NN Valley habitats and it will take you back to that page where it's got those 5 different habitat types if you want to. It's probably easier to scroll at this point, but it's however you want to use the document. So the NN Valley priority is, this one's related to farmland, which is maintain, restore and create priority habitats through effective engagement with farmers and landowners. Again, we have a list of practical actions. Now, one of these does have a little star, which is related to the harvest mouse. So that practical action 74 there is related to what those actions could support the harvest mouse. You'll see that this box at the top with the wider natural capital benefits has slightly changed for this one. So it does talk about food production, raw materials, nutrient cycling, soil fertility, etc., because it's related to farmland. The rationale there again in that box, and the icon at the bottom clicking through to the map. So you can see hopefully we've tried to keep it as simple as possible for people to get through and digest and get to the information that they want to. So that's just a couple of examples from within the document of those pages. So just moving on to the mapping portal, you do have to click a little box that will then get you into this, saying that you've read those kind of the disclaimers at the front of that and what this is related to. You will see here on the right hand side, they're the codes from the main document. So I mentioned one earlier. They're all broken down into the character areas. You have to click that little green box in order to turn them on. Otherwise it just looks like a blank map. That's quite important. And this map is with all of the measures clicked on. So you have your written meaning of the codes on the left-hand side, so you don't have to go backwards and forwards with the document as well. You can see that there's quite some large areas shown on the map. We've got quite specific fields identified in some instances, and that relates back to the habitat opportunity mapping and identifying the best multifunctional areas. So a lot in the Rockingham Forest area is about connecting priority woodland or corridors. You will also see that we've got some light green larger areas that relates to functionally linked land. The redder splodges around Wellingborough and Rushden are to do with areas of search for alternative green space for to be publicly accessible. So that takes the pressure away from the special protection area. So functionally linked land, if you've not heard that term, is land to support the special protection area that runs along the NN Valley, and suitable land for those qualifying species to forage and graze. So they're areas of search. Within that, we wouldn't expect all of those areas to be taken up with that particular measure. We know, for example, that functionally linked land for the plovers is needing to be overwintered stubbly crop, I'm told, on rotation probably every 3 years. So we wouldn't expect those whole areas to be as such, but within those areas, we would expect there to be a good proportion of that. And that's something that we would expect Natural England to be able to advise on in more detail. You'll also see that we've got some catchments identified, some large areas running through from the Harper's Brook and the Ides, and also the Southwick Brook up that way. Again, they're broad locations for natural flood management to take place, or nature-based solutions to take place to support them, surface water flooding and wider flooding. So again, it's not expected that the whole area will do that. There's just opportunities within there to help deliver. And just moving on to the next page, this is when you start to zoom in on various aspects. Again, you've got your codes from the main document, the meanings of a code, and then this particular highlighted blue one with the little grey box pointing towards it is what you would get if you click on it. So that gives you a little bit more detail. So buffer and connect, ancient and priority habitat woodlands in here, and then again those ecosystem services that they would help to achieve if that was to be turned to woodland, for example. Sometimes there is more than one covering a field, so there would be a little arrow around here where the code number is, so you can click through and see which other ones it might be in relation to. So that's an overview of the mapping. And the next slide I've got on here is really probably a page that no one's going to get to because it's the very last page of the document. But actually, to me, it's the most heartwarming page that you can get. So I took some time to talk to a local primary school, asking them what they thought about nature, what they wanted for nature. Some of the younger ones drew some pictures. So I've got a great quote there from Isla and a lovely picture from Lennox there, just to demonstrate why we're doing this. And then also on the left-hand side, I've got a quote from Stuart, aged 85. So I went to a care home as well and spoke to some of the residents there about their memories and wishes for the natural environment. So I think it's heartwarming, and I wanted to point it out because I know not many people will read all the way through to the end. So it's there, and to demonstrate that we did do that wider engagement with probably harder to reach groups, but for the younger generation, certainly very important groups that have nature concerns at that very young age. So that's probably enough overview of the document itself. So considerations for farmers and landowners. So what I would suggest, if you haven't already, is to review the maps and measures for your character area, for your land holdings, alongside those Northamptonshire wide priorities as well. You can make any comments either through the consultation questionnaire that's available, or you can just email in and we'll be able to pick those up as long as it's before the 9th of December. I would say if you're making suggestions for additional land to be included, ideally link that back to the priorities and actions that it would help to deliver. We wouldn't look very favourably on a piece of land that's in the middle of nowhere and doesn't obviously achieve anything for that bigger, better connected natural environment that we want to see. So it's linking back to those priorities and actions, those codings. Then some further suggestions is, review what it says for your land. And these are most likely a lot of things that you're already doing. Don't really want to tell you what you should be doing, but this is what stakeholders have said to us that could take place, obviously not just within farmland, with any other land management, looking at management plans, etc. Deer control is a big issue that we see in certain parts of the authority area, might be less so in others, but there's just some suggestions that are taken from the delivery options document, which it isn't part of the LNRS. It's just a supporting document that we've produced. We want it to be a live document so that we can reflect on best practice, where funding streams become available, so we can update it, whereas the LNRS itself is a static document once it's updated for anything between 3 and 10 years. So we thought it was important to have that as a separate piece of work. But any comments you do have on that, please do let us know. Then thinking about other groups that you might be linked into, you might be working on specific species, so you could look for those improvements that you might want to do throughout the document. Probably more so for local authorities or public estate, where they just cut the grass and don't necessarily do anything interesting for nature within those. So review your management regimes. But also the last one there is probably more interesting, is produce a detailed management plan. You've probably already got those in any case, but this might be able to link into other opportunities. And then the parish level nature recovery plans, depending on where your land ownership is. You might be close to a settlement, you might work closely with your parish council or your town council. This is a pilot that's taking place in the north of the authority area. We have 10, 12 parishes that are looking at doing that, and it's really that fine level detail and therefore delivery that could happen on the ground. I'm hopeful that we might be able to roll that out across a wider area in due course. Then moving on to other tools, biodiversity net gain, obviously 10% is now mandatory. So the LNRS can support on-site as well, because developers can look to see how they best integrate their development with the surrounding area, taking on board those priorities, either that are in the document or spatially. They have equal weighting from a design point of view, that you should be taking that into account. And then if you are looking at off-site delivery, the LNRS can support the location of where habitat banks could be best placed. It's not to say that they have to happen within areas identified, it's just that will help to achieve that bigger, better, joined up nature within North Northamptonshire. And then the point at the bottom is it could potentially influence funding streams. It's yet unknown exactly how that's going to play out. We don't have any particular information on that as yet. I don't know if anyone on the call has. Perhaps get to that later. But we're hopeful that once the LNRS is adopted and is a final document, then that will be taken into account by those funders and various streams that you tap into one way or another. And then I haven't put it on there, but we are expecting a document to be issued by DEFRA before the end of the year, apparently, that talks about planning and the LNRS, so how the planning system will use the LNRS to, if it is to influence each other, how that is to be the case. We already know through the Levelling Up Act that we do have to, that the strategic planning must take account of the LNRS. So how it does that through site assessments and locations for development, but there's probably another level of detail that we're expecting from DEFRA to help guide us on that. And then the next steps for us is to assess all the comments that we have through the consultation, make any updates on the document and mapping. But then importantly, once it's agreed as the final LNRS, move through to delivery and work programmes, working with partners, working with landowners, how the strategy can start to be delivered and helping to support applying for funding. So that's quite a whiz through what is a fairly complex document. It's new, it's the first ones that are being written across the country. It's been a complex process, but hopefully we've been able to present the information in a way that is usable for most people. So any questions after this presentation, please contact me on those details there and I'll do my best to get back to you. But as I say, if it is in relation to the public consultation, they need to be with us by the 9th of December. Thank you. Any questions?
I'm
All
going
right, Sandra.
to stop the recording. Then we can go with the questions.
That would be good. Thank you.